Welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It, the podcast to help you fix your marriage. I'm Shai Lewis. I'm here with Nina Roesner. Our mission is to help you, Christian married man or woman, navigate conflict and build connection so you can have a thriving marriage. All right, so today our topic is self-love or self-respect selfish? So what we want to do today is help you, our listener, understand the difference between those two things. We know that this is really a common topic today. Self-love, self-care, we see these conversations happening everywhere. And if you're a Christian, you might have heard a bit of a conflicting message. We know that God says in the end times that men will be lovers of themselves. So that right there can seem like a big contradiction, right? We also think about Christ and him dying on the cross, right? So we're taught in church to die to ourselves. That is scriptural. And then there's this notion of we come into the world loving ourselves. We think about ourselves as babies. We cry for our needs to be met. And until we mature, we're pretty selfish beings. So it can be a little bit confusing if you try to merge those two concepts together. So we want to tackle that today, and I'm excited about it. So welcome, Nina.
Hey,
What are your
Shai.
thoughts?
Well, I have a few as usual. And it's a neat topic because there's just there's so much misinformation around it in the culture and in the church, right? And then the way that we've dealt with it, it just confuses people further, I think. So I'm excited to take a stab at this today and probably annoy and irritate some people. I don't mean to do that, and I mean that in the best of ways. The irritation that's in your sweater that lets you know that there's something that isn't supposed to be there. It's like, okay, well, let's get rid of that, and maybe that's it. But then let's make sure that the things we're doing actually build our faith and deepen our connection with God, ourselves, and other people, for sure.
Definitely. All right, so before we get into the topic, I just want to direct our listeners and viewers to our Greater Impact site. It is greaterimpactwives.org. This is where you can find a free PDF called 5 Tools for How to Stop Walking on Eggshells. We also have a marriage assessment for you on that website where you can just take a look at your marriage and see where you are and maybe reach out to us if you have questions. All right, so I have heard it said that our relationship with ourself is, well, let me say it differently. Relationships are only as good as our relationship with ourselves. How we treat ourselves is sort of the roadmap we give to people we are in relationship with. I was listening to an interview of a pastor. He's a well-known pastor, and he was describing the time where he and his wife were dating, and he was getting to a place where he was contemplating asking her, but he wasn't really sure he could go through with it because he had not been really successful with being faithful in his prior relationships. So he was battling this notion of, is marriage for me? Well, she made it clear she wanted marriage. And when he told her he didn't think it was for him, she made the decision to walk away, which in his experience was a new experience, essentially. And not only did she walk away, she moved on and started to see someone else. And at that point is when things changed for him.
Mhm.
And so obviously they're married today, and he credits her with making him a better person. He even said that she did something that demonstrated that she loved him, but she also loved herself more. And that in turn made him what he says is less narcissistic. So I was just blown away by that what she chose actually for herself made a huge impact on what he chose for himself. And so what are your thoughts around that and that whole dynamic?
Yeah, you may not know this, but Jim did that to me.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, he totally dumped me in college. I was not a believer, and we were, friends and had gone on a couple of dates, and I had gone on a couple of dates with this other guy, and he says to me, Jim does, he's like, "So help me understand what it is you think you're doing." And I'm like, "What?" What do you mean? He says, "I don't date multiple people at the same time." And I was like, "Okay, are you asking me to be your girlfriend?" And he's like, "Well, I had an assumption about your character and it seems like it's something else." And I'm like, "Oh." And that made me mad. And I don't know that he said it exactly like that. Like he probably said something more kind. But that's what I heard, right? And I said, well, and I dug my heels in the sand and I just went, you know what? I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, and we'll see where this goes. And he goes, well, it's not going anywhere, basically. He just dumped me, because, and he says, I don't, it's not good for me. It's not good for you to do this way. And I was like, well, okay, then. And supernaturally, God brought us back together years later. Like, it's crazy. That's a whole other story, involving a tire that took 9 hours to get from one airport to another, years later, and a woman that we both knew that reconnected us. Like, it's just crazy. And
Wow.
then yeah, and he's the reason I became a believer too. He told me, he says, I'm dating you, but you don't go to church and you don't believe in God. And I don't think I really know that I want to pursue this with you. And I'm like, well, hey, hold up. I'll give that a go, And I did, and then fell head over heels in love with Christ, right?
Mm,
That's it. Then that became a wonderful story. But, I don't think that Jim would say, and I don't mean to speak for him, but I know if I'd have been in his shoes, and I've certainly held to my guns and had standards, and values and things that I adhere to. I'm not really thinking, am I loving myself in this space? Respecting, maybe, if I think about it. But
mhm,
honestly, I think it's just following Christ. Jim knew that you're not supposed to be unequally yoked. Um, and that's who he was, right? I don't think he gave a lot of thought to, and I know in the spaces where I have boundaries and things that I'm holding because of values, that they're not, there's no thought there of self. And that, I
mhm,
think, is at the core of the misconception of what self-love is in our culture. And it is a lot of times selfish because we're
mhm,
thinking of self. But when we're moving forward with a solid set of values and morals that are ethically based in who Jesus Christ is, we have no thought of self. And
mhm,
we're serving, we're showing up, following God, just doing the next right thing, regardless of what it costs us sometimes even. Um, and yet at the same time, when we're tired, we'll be like, hey, I need to go to bed, and people may want you to stay up later. It's like, yeah, I know. I'm not going to be a good version of myself tomorrow. And so we just take care of things because we have a different way of thinking than we did before when we were, and I need my sleep, I've been selfish about my sleep. I've been that. And it can be the same desire, but it can morph into something that's ugly and selfish. Or it can be executed with, yeah, I know, I would love to be with you too and stay up later. And I want to be a good person tomorrow as well. So I'm going to go to bed. I'll see you
mhm,
later. Those kinds of, like, it's a totally different mindset,
mm,
if that
mhm,
makes sense.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, can you talk about that a little more? Because I think there is a journey to getting to that place where you see it differently and you're actually thinking about a different consequence. Like you used the example of you're not going to be a nice person if you don't get sleep. So you're actually thinking about your interaction with
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah.
um, versus, well, I don't want to disappoint this person, or, that mindset that keeps us from making those self-respect or self-love choices. So, we know that a healthy relationship requires mutual respect. So when that's off balance, there's some things that have to happen. And one of the things that we teach here at Greater Impact is the ability to express yourself and express your needs directly, being able to be very clear about what it is that you need to see happen or you need to change if you're not getting your needs met. And being able to say that, in a way that, comes across respectful to yourself as well as the other person.
Mhm.
Can you maybe speak to that a little bit, and how that fits into being a person of self-respect?
Yeah. So, it's all this minutia around language, right? And the
Mm.
the words mean these things, and how do you talk about it, and all of that. I we were gonna have dinner the other night, and my blood sugar got low because I had carbs for breakfast, and I never do that, and I did, and it was my own fault. Anyway, I was sensing I was getting a little bit grumpy, and I thought, I'll just be real honest. My first thought was, well, it's because he's not making dinner fast enough, early enough, on time enough, right? Like they had that blaming thought, and then I went, hold up, you know, you're having dinner at this time you guys decided you were going to have dinner. Like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, well, my blood sugar's low. So what do I do with that? Well, yeah, what do you do with that? Oh, well, I need to eat a little something right now. That let's fix this problem because I'm not a good version of myself at the moment. And I didn't say anything to him at all about this. Like the whole thing happens inside my head, and I feel like I'm talking to the Holy Spirit, within myself. Is that love? I think so. Why is that? Because God is. God is love, right? And the Bible doesn't tell us necessarily to love yourself. It says love others as you love yourself. So what does that mean? It assumes that we're taking care of ourselves and that we would take care of others, that we're treating ourselves as somebody that is worthy of being cared for, right? But also taking responsibility for that when others don't see it, don't do it, right? We're not reliant on other people to mother us. We're adults. So when I navigate the topic and I think, well, there's this secular notion of love yourself, and it makes me think of a bathtub with bubbles and rose petals in it, and a glass of wine, and a book to read, and maybe a Harlequin romance or something. It's like, oh, I'm going to do some me time. It's like, and for me, I'd get nothing out of that. I know some women love doing a bathtub thing, and I'm like, what a waste of time. But I want to go get dirty on a horse. That would be how I take care of myself. I go do something fun. Um, and then you have the whole, well, is it selfish, right? So
Yeah.
you have to weigh all of these things, but it comes down to what does God want me doing right now? And then what am I setting up in my life to bring the best that He's created me to be into existence?
Mhm.
I could be really selfish. I would ride horses every single day with my pack of friends that were crazy and wonderful. I'd do it every single day if I could. That would negatively impact so many things in my life.
Mm.
I can squeeze in maybe 3 times a week. That's it. And that builds relationships with my daughter-in-law, with my friends. It builds my skill. But any more of that, more than that, doesn't feel like I'm taking care of myself or relationships or anything. Any more than that feels like gluttony or selfishness, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So, to dissect the topic, it's like I think we're pretty good at loving ourselves in
Mhm.
this. Like we're gonna do whatever like we're gonna be selfish by nature. We come out of the womb that way. Um, and then we need to be in a space where we can communicate about the stuff that we need. But
Yeah.
that first communication, so I'm gonna come all the way back to making dinner. That first communication needs to be within ourselves with the Holy Spirit because we don't even know what's true in that moment. Is there really something that I need from this other person? Or is it, I haven't taken care of myself today and now I'm reaping the, well, consequence of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes me think about neediness because I feel like there's a difference between having your needs met and then being needy, right?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that might be the difference. It's maybe this is something I could do for myself. And if it isn't, then of course you ask, but I don't know. What are your thoughts around that? How do we know when we're being needy,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Well, am I okay if the person says no?
Mm,
If not, I'm needy. If I am, I'm not. Yeah, there's a huge difference there. And so then I find another option to solve my problem that I have. Like right now, I've got stupid tendonitis. It's really bad. And I'm not watering the birds in the morning. I got a flock of poultry, ducks, chickens, turkeys. My husband's coming out there and doing that for me. Um, and if he wasn't, like I asked him to, and well, he offered actually. He saw me struggling with that. And he's like, "Why are you doing that when you have tendonitis?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't want to bug you with it." And he's like, "You need help." I'm like, "Yeah, I do actually." And
hmm.
he said, "All right, I'll come help you with this till the tendonitis is gone." And he's been doing that. Now, let's say that he was not mature and
Right,
wasn't in a place where he would offer that. Or if
right.
I asked him and he said, "Pff, you wanted those chickens, you take care of them." Maybe he's that selfish. Like I can't see that being a thing, but let's say he was.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd be in a situation of, okay, the birds will die without water. This has to happen. This is a need thing, right?
Hmm.
So what do I do? Well, if the solution to my problem has to be that he has to do this and he has to do it with a great attitude and cheerful and just be, oh, honey, all the time, then that's me being needy.
Hmm.
If my solution is, well, this needs to get done, he can't, because he goes downtown to work 3 days a week too, you know,
Hmm.
and and he's getting up early to go, water the birds before he goes and does that. Like, but let's say he forgot or something. Like, I'd work something else out. I have a neighbor I could call. My son lives 3 miles from here. Like, I could figure this out, or I could like figure out some sort of multi-trip thing with a smaller bucket, we'll say, where I didn't mess up my wrist. But at some point, we have to go, how do I feel when people tell me no when I have a request? And do
Hmm.
I need this from them in
Hmm.
a certain way? Or is this just a thing that needs to get done? And it's up to me to find a solution because I'm responsible for it. So I think there's a big difference in that.
Yeah, definitely. So what if you're on the other side of that, where like you originally said, at first you thought you could do it yourself, even though you really couldn't. There is that mindset where I rather do it on my own than ask for help.
Hmm.
And those are often the people that need to ask for help.
Hmm.
Um, so what do you say to that person where it's like they're just, and this happens to women a lot when we become wives and mothers and we have other people to take care of, we tend to put ourselves to the back. And so, and then also if you're like a person that just likes to serve or you like
Hmm.
to give, this could be a really hard thing for you to embrace or even
Yes.
grasp the notion of I need help.
Hmm.
And that I feel like is a way that you love yourself and you respect yourself because you're not overextending yourself. You're not, you're setting boundaries essentially.
Yes.
So, I mean, can you maybe speak to that for that person that's like, but oh gosh, if I don't do it, then it won't get done well, or whatever their reason is.
Yeah. Or it won't, yeah, so it won't get done well. It won't get done or it won't get done well. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So can you lower your standards? Like if you
Mm,
have kids and you're doing all the chores in the house, you're not teaching them how to do chores. There's college students right now that don't have made beds, that don't know, like 20 somethings that will say, I don't understand how toilet paper works. Like there's no toilet paper and it's a crisis. Like go to the store and buy it. Like it doesn't magically appear every day. There's not gnomes doing this work for you. Well, now that you're out on your own, yeah, mom did it while you were gone. Like, no, we need to train these kids to understand how things happen.
mhm,
We, and I think it's naturally wired into women. We're competent, we're capable, we can do it, so we do.
mhm,
We're not teaching anybody anything. Life is supposed to be messy. And
mhm,
and so the kid that is gonna clean the toilet, like you've got to teach them how to do it. A 5-year-old can clean a toilet. Now you might need to go back over it after they're, without them seeing you later the next day or something. But can you create children that have skills? Absolutely. And when we moved to the farm and I started following agricultural people, that's where I started seeing the most mature kids and the most mature
mhm,
young adults is these farm kids because the parents need the help and those kids need to learn and everybody pitches in and you become part of something. It's an incredible, beautiful experience. And I know a lot of farm families where that's what's happening because you need their help. It
mhm,
has to get done. And they get the great jobs of, hand bottle feeding lambs and the stuff like that. So it's a really cool experience, but they're also mopping floors and shoveling manure and things like that. And it's good. The struggle's good. We think we love somebody by doing something for them when we're really just making them incompetent. And that is a plague in our culture. And you look at the 20 somethings right now, and a lot of them don't know how to do the most basic of things. And it's so sad. So that's my speech on that.
Agree, agree. All right, so we've touched on making your needs clear, being direct. We've also talked a little bit about doing things that make yourself happy, whether it's taking a bath or riding a horse. The last thing I wanted to mention is developing a strong no, being able to say no, whether
Mhm.
it's to yourself or to others. And also having the ability to walk away, sort of like the example we spoke of earlier with you and Jim, or with the example I used. That's pretty powerful when you're able to say no and walk away and leave all your cards on the table, and whatever will be, will be. Talk about why that is such a powerful way to respect yourself and maybe even change the dynamic in your relationship.
Yeah. When you're looking at what are you saying no to, a lot of people, especially, well, it's both men and women, but they don't say no because they know they can do something or are capable in terms of have the skill or knowledge to. What we're missing is, does God want me to do this right now? Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. So who's really in charge of your time? Um, is the Lord in charge of your time? Are we asking God, should I do this thing that sounds like it'd be easy, but so are 400 other things that maybe are taking your time when you need margin? We don't have the gift of availability to God or others if our days are so jam-packed that there's no margin where somebody can't call and say, "Hey, can you pray with me right now?" And those are the things that we end up saying no to,
Mm,
because we've said yes to making cookies for the scout troop, when anybody could have done that, but we said yes because we're proud of our cookies or, we got specifically asked. So I like the phrase, let me pray about that and I'll get back to you. If they need to know yes or no right now, that answers their question for them. Well, let me call you if I still need somebody is usually the response I get when you're in a, dead heat time wise with somebody. Um, but the reality is if you actually pray about it and God says, yeah, go do it, then whatever happens with your time, you know that that's okay because he asked me to do this thing. If he says no, then you've allowed someone else to be blessed, some person with another gift to step into that space and maybe serve for the first time. We don't need everybody who's, the busiest people in the church and the busiest people in the community doing all of the things. It's like, how about we spread some of that out? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And
Right.
then your best self can show up. And then you're not frying yourself either. You know, you have the margin.
Oh, margin. Yeah, and that I have learned is a game changer. Having margin, whether it's energy or time or resources, like it can change your life and definitely changes how you show up in your own life. So that's a really good one. All right, so I want to shift to the last segment, which is the question of the day. This is where we take questions from either our course members or clients, and they remain anonymous, but we think these are going to be helpful to our audience as well because we're all going through the same thing, right? There's nothing new under the sun. So, one client writes, she says, my husband has a habit of replaying fights in his head and thus re-injuring himself over and over. She said they had a fight recently. He was rude and hurtful. She asked what was bothering him, and he went into the old stuff. He said he couldn't stop thinking about it. She says she's able to give him what he needs generally, but his grumpiness towards her persists. Same thing happens again and again. She's done all the things, like she's done the self-care, she's tried not to complain, but she's just worn out from it all. And she feels like it's further injuring their relationship.
Mhm.
And she's asking, how would you have her handle this?
Yeah. So if I'm not married to her husband, but if I was in her situation, I would make sure I'd asked for forgiveness for the thing that I did in that old conversation, right?
Mhm.
The next time it came up and he said, well, I'm thinking about blah, blah, blah. And I would say, you know what? You're absolutely right. I was wrong to ABC, and I hope you can forgive me for it. I've been trying to not do that again. Have you noticed? And whatever comes out of that. And then if it comes up again and he does the same thing, I'm like, hold up. So, question, um, I've apologized for that and I've changed my behavior. I'm wondering, what is it that you need to forgive me and be able to move on? And at that point, it points out to him that this is now your job to deal with this. I don't know. I just can't stop thinking about it. Okay. Well, it's interfering with how we interact. So I want to encourage you to do whatever it takes to manage that, because I don't want to hear about it anymore. I've done my part here. I'm working on it. And I want you to do the same thing because our relationship deserves that. And I love you. And that's it. I'd be done. And if it came up again, I'd be like, hold up. We don't talk about that one. Let me
Yeah.
know when you've done some work and we can talk about the thing that we have happening right now, which is something else. So, and then I'd leave the conversation. I would make it difficult to move forward when there's unresolved stuff on his end. And I wouldn't do it to be mean. I would do it because it's good for him to have to navigate that and figure it out. So that's why I would do that. Not because I'm mean and trying to get even. That's not my job. It's good for the relationship for both people to forgive themselves and each other and move on. It's already been paid for by Christ, you know? So, but maybe she didn't apologize, or maybe she did and then she keeps doing the thing, right? Uh,
Mm,
so who knows? But it's an opportunity to learn something and then ask the other person to forgive you. And then when they don't, you bring that back up to them and ask them what's it going to take for you to be able to do this. And yeah, so it's all, we're all iron sharpening iron, and sometimes it's hot and sometimes there's pounding. Hope that
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah, that was awesome. All right. So what will you do with the information you have today? We invite you to check out our website again. There's lots of information there. And also check out the next episode on how to resolve conflict. It will be very helpful. And yeah, until next time, thanks for joining.